What's up guys? So today we're going to be talking about the IMAT 2024. So the idea of this video is to go through the 23 questions we had that year and to analyze the topics and the subject in order to try to understand what should we expect for the IMAT 2025. So I organized all the questions we had that year, and if you take a careful look, you're going to see that the majority of the questions here, they are related to cell biology in some way. So we have bioenergetics here, we have chemistry of life talking about biomolecules, we have cell biology itself, and we have a lot of questions about genetics. But that's not a reason for panic, because if you take a look, the questions from genetics, they're more conceptual. So if you understand what is an allele, what is gene, so those main topics I think we're going to be seeing again. So it's important to have a solid understanding more than pedigree or iridogram. Not saying that that's not important, but I'm just telling you that the main topics of genetics will be more relevant at this point for the IMAT, I believe. So right, I decided to split this video into 3 parts. I don't want the video to get too long. So the first part, we're going to be covering the first 8 questions of the IMAT, and then we're just going to follow from there. So guys, as you can see, the first couple of questions we have from the IMAT 2024, they're very straightforward. So whether you know or you don't, which can be good because you're not going to be losing too much time, all right? One of the things that I recommend is that you should go through all the questions before really getting into the IMAT questions, so you can just highlight the questions that you think they're easy and you're going to be able to sort it very quickly. Because more than anything, the IMAT is it's a test that is going to be testing your ability to manage your time with question solving, so it's important to be sharp on that. Okay guys, so question number 10, which process occurs within the mitochondria? So very straightforward. Letter A, glycolysis. Yeah, glycolysis is one of the steps of the cell respiration, but it doesn't occur in the mitochondria. As you guys remember, the glycolysis will happen in the matrix of the cell, okay, outside of mitochondria. So not what we're looking for. Letter B, photosynthesis. That doesn't occur in mitochondria. We're talking about a different organelle, okay, in this case a chloroplast. Letter C, the metallization of sugar. Very important process as well, but it doesn't occur in the mitochondria. We're talking about the rough endoplasmatic reticulum, or the Golgi. Letter D, the formation of microbodies. Okay, so immune system microbodies are made out of proteins, so not what we're looking for. So that leaves us to letter E, cellular respiration. That's the correct option. Question 11, what is a hydrogen bond? That's a very important question as well, because it's not only important for biology, but for chemistry. It's important to remember the hydrogen bond is not a proper bond. So we're talking about an interaction between molecules. So the IMAT is going to try to trick you with this concept, but it's important to keep this in mind. For letter A, it's a covalent bond between hydrogen and oxygen. Nope, it's not a covalent bond. Letter B, it's a strong bond which allows bonding between non-polar molecules. Not what we're looking for. Letter C, it's a bond which occurs between hydrogen and oxygen. Okay, so far so good. Within a water molecule. So not one water molecule, but between water molecules. So no, not what we're looking for. Letter D, it's a bond between a hydrogen atom and another strongly electronegative atom, such as oxygen or nitrogen, which is present in another molecule. Perfect. Very complete answer. That's what we're looking for. It can occur between hydrogen and oxygen, or nitrogen, or even fluorine. That it wasn't written there, but it's absolutely correct. Again, these are questions that you can make like in seconds, okay? I'm just taking a little bit more time because I want to go through the options with you guys, but it's basically a 15 seconds question. Just to make it clear here, whenever we're talking about a covalent bond, okay, we're talking about a bond that happens in one molecule, okay, within the molecule of whatever, in this case the water. So this is a covalent bond, and this that you can see that it has little dots, okay, it's not a straight line. We're talking about an interaction between molecules. So another important place that we can find hydrogen bonds, it's in our DNA, okay? So the interaction that happens between the nitrogen bases, it is happening through a hydrogen bond. Remember that the thymine and adenine has 2 hydrogen bonds, and the cytosine and the guanine has 3. It's a very important detail that is important for you to keep in mind. Just other examples of hydrogen bonds that we can find in biology. Letter T, in an eukaryote cell, Krebs cycle reaction occurs again. So we're talking about mitochondria. So letter A, cytoplasm, no. On the internal membrane of the mitochondria, no. In the mitochondrial matrix. Oh, okay, that's what we're looking for. It's important to remember that the cell respiration has different processes, and each process happens in a different place inside of the cell. So as we mentioned, the glycolysis is going to happen in the cytoplasm. We're going to have the cell, the Krebs cycle happen in the matrix. We're going to have some process happen in the internal membrane of the mitochondria. So, but in this case, it's letter C. Just for you guys to remember here, guys, I brought you a little scheme here. So what process that you can find in the mitochondria is very important, not only for cell respiration, but for other processes like apoptosis, for example. That is basically the suicide of a cell. Whenever they program a suicide, it's through apoptosis, through cytochrome C. And what I mentioned before, different locations for different processes of the cell respiration. Okay, so we have glycolysis happening in the cytosol, the pyruvate oxidation, that is basically a discarboxylation process that happens after the glycolysis and before the Krebs cycle. So it's a link process. And then we have the oxidative phosphorylation. Okay, that's the one that is going to produce the majority of the ATP. So having this in mind and fresh is going to be very important for those quick and straightforward questions. Letter D, what kind of monosaccharide is a glucose? So very straightforward and basic. Sometimes we don't pay attention to these things, but in this case, glucose, okay, we're talking about a monosaccharide that has 6 carbons, so it has the shapes of exos, okay? If you don't know this, you might panic a little bit, but I'm just gonna bring this little scheme here. So we have 3 main monosaccharides, okay, the glucose, the fructose, and the galactose. It might be interesting for you to remember that the fructose is the only one that has 5 carbons instead of 6. Could help you. And just remember that every time we have an O's at the end, we're talking about a carbohydrate. Question 14, which pentose sugar is present in an RNA nucleotide? Okay, nucleotide has a sugar, and this also has a phosphate, and it has a nitrogen base. So we're talking about the sugar here. Which type of sugar that we can find in the RNA? So basically there are 2 different types that we can find when we're talking about genetic material. So one of them is the ribose, the other one is the desoxyribose, okay? In this case, the ribose is the one we're looking for. It's where the name RNA comes from. So letter A is a ribose, so not much to say about this. Again, I'm just gonna bring a little structure here to you guys to remember. So it has a really similar shape as the ATP molecule. It has the same root, but in this case here, it has only 1 phosphate, okay? So we have 2 different sugars that can take place here, the ribose and the deoxyribose. The deoxyribose the present in the DNA, and it does have this name because less oxygen. That's why we call it deoxyribose. Okay, so in this case it would not have this oxygen, so if this one here has oxygen, so we're talking about the RNA. And here we can have different types, okay, of combinations as we were seeing before. So moving forward to question 15, what are carrier proteins? So carrier proteins, most of the times we don't talk about this. If you're not familiar, you might think that we're talking about transfer RNA, or we're talking about some type of process involving the cytoskeleton, but it's not the case. We're talking about a protein membrane, okay? Remember that we have 2 different types of protein membranes. We have the ones that we call channel, and you have the carrier that's basically like a little mechanism, okay, that's going to be open in one side, and whenever it has the substrate, it's going to allow it to come in whenever it has a stimulation for that. But in this case, what is a carrier protein? Letter A, they are proteins that phosphorylate enzymes in the plasma membrane. So we're going to have a lot of distracted options here. So now what we're looking for, letter B, they are proteins that transfer molecules and ions across the plasma membrane. Perfect. That's the correct option. Letter B is what we're looking for. So once again here, I'm going to bring a little scheme here to clarify some concepts. So we're going to have in our membrane the protein channel, all right, and the carrier proteins that are going to have this little movement here, okay? Question 16, what is a cell energy currency? All right, so ATP, that's what we're talking about, okay? We have other options here, letter A, FADH, NADH, creatine, NADH. So they are also important for energy, okay? Creatine, for example, for the ones who go to the gym, we're talking about a storage for the phosphate, but it's not the currency itself. It's not the one that is involved in every metabolic process. That's ATP. Question 17, which kind of reaction is an ATP hydrolysis? So hydrolysis, this is already giving you the hint. So whenever we have lysis in the name, we're talking about breaking stuff. It's the opposite of condensation. It's the opposite of synthesis. So hydrolysis is breaking something through what? Through water. Okay, so if you're breaking something, most likely we are producing heat and energy. Think about the motor of a car, for example. There's a reaction happening inside, so we're gonna have a lot of heat being produced as well, along with energy to move the car, for example. So if you're talking about releasing energy, we're talking about something that is organic. Okay, these concepts has to be very solid in your mind. So letter D is the correct option here. In question 18, the presence of intracellular compartmentalization is a characteristic of which organism? So the main word here, compartmentalization. So first of all, which type of cells do we have in the planet? For the high school and secondary, we're gonna just stick to 2. There's gonna be the prokaryon and the eukaryon. So the names itself has to do with this characteristic. So the eukaryon is the one that has a true nucleus, okay? Karyon has to do with nucleus. So an eukaryon is the one that has compartmentalization. And prokaryon, that is basically bacteria, for example, we're not gonna have a true nucleus. Okay, it's a primitive nucleus. So that's because we don't have a nucleus, we don't have organelles there, we don't have compartmentalization. So let's take a look at the options here. So we have letter A, the virus. You guys know the virus doesn't have a metabolism itself. It depends of other organisms to have a metabolism. So if it doesn't even have that, it's not gonna have compartmentalization. Letter B, of bacteria. No, bacteria is a type of prokaryon cells. Letter C, prokaryons. Of course not. If we cross over bacteria, we're gonna have to cross prokaryon itself as well. Letter D, only algae. So yeah, algae does have compartmentalization, but the word only is screwing things here because we know that's not true. We have fungus, we have plants, we have animal cells. They are all compartmentalization cells, okay, because they're all part of the group that we call eukaryon. So letter E is what we're looking for. Just a small tip here, and I mentioned this before. Every time we have words like only, never, okay, words that are like absolute, they tend to be wrong, because as you guys know, biology has tons of exceptions. So it's really hard to try to label and say, no, this never is gonna happen. This only happens in this case. So try to avoid as most as you can questions like this because they tend to be wrong. All right, guys, so these are the first couple questions that I wanted to bring to you. I'm gonna try to post the next 2 videos as quick as possible. I hope you guys enjoyed, and if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like it and to subscribe to the channel if you're new, and I hope to see you guys in the next one.